This is a sleek and responsive image slider which displays a gallery of breadth on this web page. It is made using HTML and CSS, and to set behavior to this app we will be using JavaScript, which would power the left and right arrows as you can see here. And then it's used for the custom scroll bar that is present at the bottom, which is visible here. And lastly, it's also used for the model preview for each image, which is this. You can preview any image on the slider by clicking on the relevant image of your choice, and all of this is done with transition effects. Now let's see how we can build this project. And to get started, you will need to download the starter files for this web page. It will be in a zip file. You can find it on the video description. And once you have all the files, open this folder on VS Code or any IDE that you use. And this would be the structure of our starter files. This will be the HTML part of our web page. And then inside assets, we have style.css, which has a custom font here with two CSS variables and then some default values. And then we have the images. These will be all the images that we'll be using. And then lastly we have main.js. This is where we will be doing all our JavaScript code. I'll explain this part once we get to this one. We can now get started with the HTML part of our web page. We'll start with the body tag. First we'll create a div called container, and inside this div we'll have one h1 tag with a class of header which will say bread gallery. You can also open this on a live server. And then we have another div here called slider wrapper. And inside this div we have a button with an ID of previous slide, and it will have the following classes. And this will be the left arrow, and these arrows are coming from a library which is linked up here. And now once that is done, we can create another div for all the images, which would be the image list. And then we'll create an image element here. The src here would be the images we'll be using. Here we'll select our first image, and then it will have a class of image -item, and we'll need 9 more copies of this same image tag. And then you just need to replace these numbers with 2, 3, 4 and 5 and so on until 10. This is what the images would look like right now, and this is the previous arrow we just created before. And after this div we'll be creating another button here. You can actually copy this button down here and just make some minor changes. This will be next slide. And then we have another div here called slider-scroll bar. This is the custom scroll bar we'll be using on this web page. And then lastly we will create another div. This is for the image model, the class of model. And with that, our HTML part is now done. Let's now move straight towards the styling part of this web page, which is the style.css. In the style.css file, let's first work on all the responsive design parts so that we can actually have a mobile view present right next to our IDE. And with this part done, let's move the live server window right next to the IDE. Now you can start styling the elements. First element will be the body element. And now we can jump straight into the class styling. First we'll style the container, and then we'll style the header, and now the slider wrapper. Style the slide button here. I'll go through the CSS parts quickly because the main part about this project is all about JavaScript. And this would be the hover effect for the slide button, and this is the style for the previous slide button, whereas this one would be for the next slide button. And then this style would be for the image list div, and this is for the webkit scroll bar, which is part of the image list div. And this would style the individual images on that slide, and this would give the hover effect for the images like this, as you can see now. And this styling will be for the scroll bar. We are still yet to see the scroll bar, and this would be for the scroll bar track. And now you see a small line here, and this would be the hover effect for the scroll bar. Like if you bring your mouse here, you'll be able to see the hover effect. And this is actually the slider. We still cannot slide this, but this is what it would look like. And that would be the styling for the thumb when it's active. This will be the after pseudo element, through which now you can see a color change. whenever you click. And with that, our styling part is done for the main interface. You can slide it over like this. Still the arrows in here and there will not work. We'll get to that part in a bit. And this is what the scroll bar looks like. We'll now jump straight to JavaScript. First we'll create a function here called slider. And now we'll go through each of these one by one. First we'll need to declare some variables here. And this one would be image list, which will select the image list container within the slider. And then we just need few more variables like this. And this is used to select all the slide buttons, including the previous and the next button. And these two are used to select the scroll bar container and the thumb element, which is the scroll, like this one you just see here. And this variable is used to calculate the maximum scrollable distance from the image list. I'll show you what this actually does in a bit. Next we will work on the sliding buttons, previous button and the next button. We'll use a for each loop here, passing a parameter of button. We'll add an event listener for each click. This arrow function will be triggered. And this part is used to determine the direction based on the button ID. And then this other variable or scroll amount is used to calculate the scroll amount based on the direction. And this part is used to smoothly scroll the image list. And we'll need to add a comment here. Now we'll work on this part. We will now add the event listeners for mouse move and mouse up to handle the dragging part of the slider. We'll clear this function in a bit, and this would be mouse up. And in here we'll create the handle mouse up function. So basically both these are the same. This part will add the event listener, this part will remove the event listener. Like when you drag the mouse away from the scroll bar, it will remove the event listener. Now we'll add the event listener for dragging the scroll bar thumb away. Here we'll create two variables. One would be the start x value, which will take the event, and then we'll type here as client x. This is basically the initial mouse position at the x coordinates. Then we'll create another variable called thumb position. This will be the initial position of the thumb, the scroll on the scroll bar. And now we'll create the mouse move function, which will update the thumb position based on the mouse move. Let's do that now. In here E refers to the event. This variable will calculate the movement. And then we have another variable called new thumb position, which will be the initial thumb position plus this delta x value, which will be based on the movement of the scroll, or basically the thumb. And then another variable called max thumb position. This will offset the width, and basically this is the max thumb position. And then we have another variable here called const bounded position, which will use the math object, and we'll use max here. And what this one line does is it will bound the thumb position within the scroll bar. And then next we'll need to calculate the corresponding scroll position for the image list, which can be done using another variable called scroll position. And then we need to update the thumb position. So what this part actually does is it will update the thumb position and the scroll of that image list. And yes, there's one small mistake here. This part needs to come down like this, and then you just need to remove these two parts and add them after this in this way. And now we need to create a function here called handle slide button. And what this part does is it will either show or hide the buttons based on the scroll position. What that means is if you like scroll to the very end, you will not see this button or this one here. Let's see how we can do that. And this one is used to hide the previous button if it's at the start. And then likewise we'll need to duplicate this again. This will be 1, and instead of 0 we'll type here max scroll left. Again this would be none and this part would be block, and this will hide the next button if it is at the end of that image list. And lastly in here we can update the scroll bar position. For that we'll need to create another function here called update scroll bar thumb position. You can name these functions any name. I'm just giving it descriptive names so that it's easier to understand. And in this variable what we do is using this variable we get the current scrolls position. Then we'll create another variable here called thumb position. And what this one does is it will calculate the thumb's current position. This one calculates the scroll position, this one calculates the thumb position. And next what we have to do is we'll need to update it. So we use scroll bar thumb and then style dot left and then provide this value. Here thumb position will be a value and this will be pixels. And with this part we can successfully update the thumb position within the scroll bar. And then lastly we have to add an event listener for scrolling the image list. For each time we scroll, we'll be calling in this arrow function. It will call the handle slide buttons function and then update its visibility. And then we'll also call update scroll thumb position, which will be used to update the thumb position. We are calling both these functions on this event of scrolling. And then we'll need to add another event listener here called load and then pass the slider function here. So this is basically to initialize the image slider on the window object upon load. And then lastly add this line of code here. Let's check this for any issues. Make sure the L in this is in uppercase so that we follow the camel case notation. Okay, everything looks good for now. Let's just check the web on if everything works. You can see the hovering effect and the arrows are working. Once we add this end, this arrow goes missing, and then we can click this to go back, and the scroll is also working. Alright, so we'll now jump straight to styling the model of this web page. Let me go through this quickly, and this would be the model dot show div. This will be the model content, and this part is used for a transition, meaning it would scale up and then the last two for the close div. And then this is for the hovering effect, and when this div is on focus which will be shown using an X on the screen. And with that our CSS part is now completely done. Let's quickly jump into main.js and then finally finish this thing off. Let's move this part to the very end as we'll also need to initialize the image slider with the model. Let's quickly do this now. First we'll initialize the model image. We'll call this image model, which will be an arrow function, and then create variable called model which will select the model container. And likewise we had 3 more variables like this. This one will be the model image, which will select the image element inside the model, and close btn will be used to select the close button of the model. And remember that we have already styled all these things in the style.css file, and this last one will be images, which will be used to select all the image items. And now we'll add the event listener to show the model when an image is clicked. So basically we'll use the images variable and we'll run a for each loop. For each image, this arrow function will be executed. Now this would set the model image source to the clicked image source. And then we just need to add this class using the add method and then entering show. This will be used to show the model. And then we'll have another function here for closing the model. We call it close model. It will be same like the above, an arrow function. The only difference is we will be removing the show class from the model, thus it will hide the model. We'll just run an event listener for the close button, which on click will call the close model function, and then another event listener here, which will be for the window object, which on click will run this function. If event.target equals model, you can close the model here, which will basically hide the model. And then once last part left to do here. Now since we have initialized the image slider here, we'll also initialize the image model as well on window load. And then we just need to call this image model function here. And make sure to add 0 here. And this will be selected by class name. And this would be query selector all. And for classes, we may need to make sure to add this dot in front of the class names. And also make sure this has an open and close brackets. And this is the mobile view of the web page. There won't be any arrows here. And you can also use the slider here to drag the images. And yes, that would be all. Now let's quickly check the finished image gallery project. And this is what the web version looks like now. You'll see the hovering effect on each image. And then you can scroll using your touchpad. And then you can also use the arrow keys to move with this. Or you can also use this slider here to drag front and back. Then you can also click each image to preview them on their maximum resolution. And with that, the build gallery is over. Please make sure to subscribe to stay updated for all my future videos, and click this link to check out this cool analog clock with dark mode. I'll see you there.